Hello, everyone. Hi. To the friendly voice in the crowd. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Elena Brokaw. I am the Chief Executive Officer here at the Museum of Ventura County. I'm delighted to welcome you here. It's about time Ivor came back to the museum. I think we can all agree about that. Yes. The mission of the Museum of Ventura County is to engage our participants in experiences that are meaningful through art, history, and culture. We like to engage people with art, history, and culture, and with each other. Just one of the reasons we're here tonight. One of our goals is to really bring people together and to create a sense of community here. We are a nonprofit organization. We depend on the donations of our supporters. There's too many to name here, but I would like to acknowledge our sustaining supporters, the city and the county of Ventura, and our members. Our members are the most important cohort of our supporters. Can you raise your hand if you're a member here so we can all thank you? Thank you so much. And for those of you who are not members, or if you are a member and you want to purchase a gift membership for a teacher or a graduate or somebody who's going through one of those class promotions, we have a special one-day sale. So it's a discount for one day. It expires 24 hours from now. Is it end of day tomorrow? Is that 5 or is that midnight? Oh, midnight. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. 27 hours from now. If you go online to our website, venturamuseum.org/membership, you go to join and you can use the code IVOR20. Okay, so Ivor, it's a 20% discount. It applies to every level of membership. It's Ivor with a capital I, because is there really any other way to say Ivor other than with a capital I? Here is the code. This is going to be outside. You can scan this with your camera if you want to. And we hope that you will, those of you who are not members, we hope you will join us. All right, enough about me and about the museum. We're really all here to hear Ivor with Paul Harris. So, I have known Ivor for many years. I cannot tell you how lucky I am to call him a friend. He is a journalist, he is a writer, he is a raconteur, he is a really generous man with his time. He's a wonderful listener as well as a wonderful talker, if you can imagine that. You people in the front row, would you agree? No. They're like, yeah, we know him too well. It is my pleasure to introduce the one, the only, Ivor Davis.
I always ask, can you all hear me, including those in the cheap seats? Yes, you're all right? Thank you. Okay, where do I begin? One of the things, there's a quote that I saw recently that I thought was fairly appropriate in a way to what we are doing here. And let me find it. I need to take my glasses off to read. Nostalgia is big. It's a hugely underestimated emotion. And I like that one because, in a way, we're here partly for emotion, and this is the reason that we come to events like this. We like to hear about the old days, because are the old days as good as today? You tell me later on, please. Okay. I want to say that the man you're going to see come on in a few minutes is hugely underestimated. He's a brilliant photographer, lives in Ventura County, and as you will see and hear in the next while, you'll see some of his work, and his work is fantastic. So, John, could you please play a very short film about Paul, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Thank you, John. when he comes out, as I say, this is just the sliver of what you're about to hear tonight. And he will tell us, if you ever wanted to make a sheep jump, he'll tell you how. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome the brilliant, legendary, modest Paul Harris.
Hello, I'm not quite as legendary as Ivor here, but there we are.
Never
Nice to
mind
see
all
you.
this legendary stuff. Sit down.
All right, sit down.
This is kind of a fireside chat. You know, I should, for full disclosure, I would like to say that Paul and I have been working together, not always happily. Don't say anything, Paul. For how many, 50 years?
Nearly 50 years.
Nearly
Yes,
50 years.
yes,
So,
yes.
so that you know, we've been pals for a long time. Anyway, so first of all, before we get into your little brilliant nuggets of information, tell us how you ended up in Southern California.
Okay, quickly. What you might have seen from the video, I was born in Devon, England, and I worked there for 29 years, and I felt I wanted adventure and to go somewhere else, and there were lots of jobs available in South Africa, so I put a car on a ship and went to South Africa. The job I thought I was going to get, I didn't get because it never happened. But I did get a job in Rhodesia, and I ended up in a war, and I'd never seen stuff like that before. And through a little bit of naivety and mistakes, I was deported under the Official Secrets Act from Rhodesia. About a year and a half I was there. But a friend who became a friend, the Vietnam War ended in 1975, and many of those journalists and photographers came to Rhodesia looking for the next war. And one of them was quite a famous English photographer called Terry Fincher. And he said to me, when he knew I was leaving Rhodesia, he said, "Forget this serious stuff, mate, go to Hollywood." And that's basically what I did. He arranged for me to go from England to Calgary Stampede with Prince Charles when he opened the Stampede in '77. And then I came to Los Angeles in August '77 and started my career. I knew Los Angeles, California was the place, and I think I will have found the American dream. But I was not married to my darling wife, Petronella, at that time, but I knew she was in the same town that I came from, and I proposed to her and flew back, got married, and we returned January 1978, and have had a wonderful life ever since. That's about it.
Well, thank you. Well, I remember when you first came to see me, I don't think you were married, and you talked glowingly of the woman who you were going to marry, and here she is.
Here she is.
Petronella, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much to go into. I know we have some great pictures. And by the way, when you came in, the pictures that you may have seen on the screen were pictures taken since Paul has been living in Ventura County. And some of them are magnificent. And I want to tell you, where can you see those pictures? Anywhere, Paul?
Not really, no. Unless you come to my house. There were.
Well, we are all invited to Paul's house to see those
There was a
pictures.
local businessman who did buy a couple of them and shows them in his office. I don't know if he's here. He might not be here. No, all right. But other than that, no. And interestingly enough, fascinating. The first time I arrived in 1977, the first time I came to Oxnard was in 1978 to photograph Jane Marie Mansfield, who was the first daughter of Jane Mansfield, and she lived in Oxnard. And there was a picture there of her just walking across the sand with the lifeguard tower behind her.
Yeah.
But we first had a condo here in 2004, but before that it was 1978. and I should have really bought a house on the beach that were only about 200,000 at that time. But there we are.
We all say that, Paul. I mean, come
Yes.
on. Everybody, I mean, tell me anybody who is in Ventura now or in the area doesn't regret what they didn't buy 25 years ago. Anybody doesn't agree with me, raise your hand. Thank you. Unanimous. But anyway, let's get on with Paul. Sorry, no, it sounds bad saying get on with Paul, because I do get on with Paul.
Yes.
What I'd like to show, because we've got so many great pictures, and so may I ask John if he wouldn't mind showing...
Not the first picture yet. The first picture's there. We can see Muhammad Ali, and we can see a little squirrel down on the bottom left-hand corner. And I never saw it when I took the picture, but he had a daughter who was Layla, who was 2 years old at the time, and I think that was her toy. I think we ought to start this story with this picture.
Tell me how you happened to do the story with Muhammad Ali.
The amazing local journalist who was then editor or something of Los Angeles magazine, the astonishing Ivor Davis, asked me to go with him to photograph Muhammad Ali. We had to be there at 7:30 in the morning, and we were going to have an hour to interview and photograph him. We were there, 7:30, the door opened by the maid. She led us into this room, and there was Muhammad on the telephone in his dressing gown, and he looked at us and nodded. I pointed to the camera, he nodded, and Ivor got out his pen and pencil, and I started taking pictures. Now, just a few seconds after the first picture, we might see the second picture. I had no idea that Mr. Davis would be laying in front of Muhammad, and I had to deal with that. So I had to arrange myself that I could then get stunning pictures. An hour later, he finished his phone call, hung up the phone, and said, "All right, lads, you've had your hour, bye." And he walked out the door. And Ivor and I looked at each other and we thought, hang on, this is strange. About 2 minutes went by, and he came back, he said, "Nah, just kidding, mate, sit down." Yeah. And that was it. And we spent the next 12 or 14 hours with him, whatever.
And we went back with him. We went to see him longer. We traveled with him.
Yes. We could go on now, although I don't think I've got... This, by the way, is Layla, who at that time was 2 years old. And when Muhammad died in 2016, she used this picture as a background when she did the eulogy for her father on a broadcast, whatever. So you sometimes makes you feel good when pictures are used for good purposes. And
well, what I was going to ask you was, everybody would like to know, having spent the time that we spent with Ali, if somebody said, well, what was he like? What would you say, other than the opening stanza you gave us?
I think he was an amazing character who had behavior of the very wealthiest people and the very common people. He knew, he was an ordinary man, but you also learned from Muhammad what it would be like to be one of the most famous people in the world. Everywhere we went, everyone wanted a bit of him, and you could see how he dealt with it, but with the two of us, he was amazingly human, kind, normal, an incredible man. But when he stood in front of a microphone with whatever his manager man was, what was the manager, the promoter? Don King.
Oh,
that
God,
was him.
yes.
It would be a performance from there on in. So he was astonishing. He was great.
Yeah. But by the way, you mentioned Don King, and I know we're going to go on. I remember seeing Don King with Ali, and Don King, you may remember, looked as though he'd put his finger in an electric circuit because his hair stood 3 feet high. Okay, so we've now covered Ali.
But have we? Is there another picture of Ali?
Is there another picture of Ali?
No!
No, that's not Ali. Okay, you know who that is. Paul, tell us about Ronald Reagan.
But this was also in 1980, and somehow, because I had a Secret Service credential, I became the photographer for British newspapers. He had become the 40th president of the United States, but this was before he moved to the White House, and this was the pre-interview, and he invited certain people to his ranch in Santa Ynez, just up the road. So to think that 5 years prior than this, I was living in a town of 27,000 people in the extreme southwest of England with sheep, as you've seen the sheep in the video. To think you're standing in front of Ronald and Nancy, it was pretty amazing. If you could go to the next one. Oh yes, so they rode their horses, and then the next one. Yeah, all right. So this is the last one. This was after he had retired. I think this is 1993. There were rumors that he had Alzheimer's, and he actually died in 1994. And this is his office in Century City. And I think for the Times or some English paper, I was asked, and they allowed me in because I'd seen him before. And I was in his office, just me and him, and we did a few pictures, but there's not much you can do that's exciting. But again, he was polite and did everything I asked. And I was hoping I'd added a picture, but I hadn't. In the ranch house, he had a jackrabbit head on the wall. It's a mythical, right. And at one stage, he and Nancy got very close, that his head was exactly behind the horns that came out, and I had to just tell him to move a bit, otherwise. But it's one of those pictures you wish you had got. When you reflect on it years later, it would have been quite amusing, but it wasn't. Anyway, we move to the next person.
Before we get to Michael,
Yes.
can I ask you, generally speaking, as a journalist working and covering and seeing Reagan, looking at in today's world, what kind of guy did you find him? How was he?
Okay. I should be cautious here.
Did he ever give you any
No,
jelly beans? Did he ever give you jelly beans?
He never gave me jelly
Okay.
beans, no. I went on the USS Constellation with him, which is an aircraft carrier. I went to several press conferences with him, and at all times he was an extremely respectful, well-spoken person. I mean, I was stunned that an actor could become president of the United States at the time. But I think he did an astonishing job for the 8 years he was president, and it was what you want from anyone, whether they're right-wing or left-wing. It's nice for that person to be respectful and behave like a president, and that's what Mr. Reagan always did. And he was always polite to me. I'm sure if I saw him the next day and he didn't realize it was a press thing, he wouldn't have a clue who I was. Yeah. But when I was there with him, he was good.
Yeah. So now we have the Cockney Kid.
Yes.
Michael Caine.
Who moved to Los Angeles, and you probably know this very well because of his career. He was quite famous in England.
Alfie,
but he thought he had to become a global success, and the only way he was going to be able to do that is come to Los Angeles. And go on.
And he did. And tell us the story about the magnificent Rolls Royce, because he obviously felt to be a movie star in Beverly Hills and
Yes.
Hollywood, you have to buy a Rolls. Tell us about the Rolls.
But the problem was he had no driving license and couldn't drive. So he bought this car, and all he could do was lean against it. So there was really not much else he could do. And he bought this house. I think there's some other pictures of them a couple years later, because again, I did him a couple times, 2 or 3 times. And this is his wife, Shakira. I hope I got that name right.
Yes, you have.
And they're in the house. Whatever. The house he owned, he bought, was on the same street that Roman Polanski lived with Sharon Tate, and the same house that those murders occurred in.
Yes. By the way, just do you remember Shakira is a beautiful lady. Do you know how he fell for her? Why?
No, I did not.
Okay. Well, sorry.
He,
Okay.
he wouldn't tell me. How did
wouldn't
he,
tell you.
Ivor?
That's good.
Yes,
No, I
thank
mean, she was Miss, I think she was from Guyana or somewhere, and she was a contestant in the Miss World competition, and that's how they met. Anyway, so who do we have next?
Well, we might have more of him.
More Michael.
Standing on the corner of Sunset, and I decided to do a black and white picture. You see, he's smoking a cigarette or a cigar, and there you are. Yes, nothing really to say. G. Gordon Liddy, the Watergate conspirator, and he got sent to prison for like 25 or 30 years, but he got out after 8 years. President Jimmy Carter pardoned him, and he was the one who organized the Watergate scandal. And when he came out of prison, he wrote a book called Will, and he went on a tour around America to publicize the book, and I went with him. This is in Texas. He told me how he liked to drink, he liked to work out in the mornings, and would I like to come into his bedroom and see him work out? And this is what he was like when I went in his bedroom. If we go to the next picture, yes. He was giving a radio interview to a young lady who was here, and she was interviewing on the radio, and she said to him, Mr. Liddy, I read and I know that your crew who did the Watergate, was it Watergate? Yes. Burglary were a little inept. They didn't do a very good job. Would you do it again? And he said, yeah. If I need to do it again, I'd do it again. And she said, well, what would you do different? He said, let me ask you, if you were about to play tennis and you had a racket and you're on the court and the person you were playing with was opposite, what are you missing? And she said, balls. And he said, exactly. And my crew did not have the balls to do the job they should have done correctly. So but he was a humorous man. We could go to the next picture. Okay, so I got him to stand in a field just off the airport. The other fascinating thing was he was in the FBI, he had been in the FBI, and he worked undercover with the CIA, and I probably spent 3-4 days with him, and he told me what it was like to be living undercover, to pretending you're someone else to everyone else you meet. And he was truly fascinating and interesting. And later on, he partnered up with Timothy Leary, and they did their American tour because they were the opposites. He was an extreme right-wing who I think actually started the campaign to arrest Leary back in the 1970s. But they went together on the show for 3 or 4 years, and they were apparently amazing because Leary, and I also photographed Leary about 6 months before he died, and he knew he was dying, and yes.
Well, that's, I mean, when you think of two buddies, you don't think of Timothy Leary and Gordon Liddy. It's just, you can't make that up. You just cannot make that up. So that's a wonderful story because I think
I didn't make it up.
No. Thank you. Thank you for. But anyway, so we're going to move on to the next one, please.
Did you ever know that Ivor wrote a book on the Beatles?
No.
He's probably never mentioned it to you because he's very discreet and private, but he did. And I didn't have much to do with the Beatles other than growing up in England with the Beatles, and yes, they were astonishing. But it was about 1982, or yes, I think it was 81 or 82, phone call, you got to get to Mexico, mate. Ringo's down there making a film called Caveman. We've arranged for you to go on the set. So off I went to Mexico, and this is how I saw Ringo. And his co-star in the film, no, it wasn't Barbara Bach, it was John Matuszak, who was a football player for the Oakland Raiders. And as you can see, he's slightly taller than Ringo. But Ringo, who I discovered, loved pets. Do we have a pet? Oh, look, there's, so he had an iguana. Now, I photographed him with the iguana and Matusak, but the paper that assigned me were not very happy with what I'd done. I thought I'd done a good job. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that he and Barbara Bach was co-starring in the film, were having an affair, and they later married, and all the newspaper wanted from me was a picture of the two of them together. I had no idea. She was sitting in her tent or something, and that was that. So that wasn't exactly the most successful set of pictures I've ever done.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you see a picture, this is amazing. If you see a picture of Ringo today, his hair is the same color. I don't know how he does it. Any idea, Paul?
I don't, and I don't know if the iguana's still alive. Is he still alive?
The iguana probably is not around, but I don't know it like you. Okay.
Yes.
So can we move on? Where are we going?
Yes. Mr. Schwarzenegger. Now, this was another one where the paper that sent me weren't that happy at the results. They had arranged for me to go to his house when he lived in Santa Monica, and they knew Maria Shriver was there with him, and my job was really to photograph him and Maria together. Well, that's not Maria with him, and that was the only photo I got with his dog. I went inside the house, and apparently Maria was at the back of the house refusing to come out, and she never came out. So, but I spent several different assignments with Mr. Schwarzenegger. This is the first time. This was at Santa Monica, a female bodybuilding competition where Arnold was a judge, and as an act of kindness to give me a good picture, he lifted up Stacey Bentley, who, I don't know if 2 means she came second. I thought she was first, but maybe she was second. But anyway, that was the first time I photographed Arnold.
Did Arnold ever, to your memory, indicate that he wanted to get into politics? Because I think he did all right.
Yeah, no, he was, the times I did him was just before he did Conan the Barbarian, and he was all about being a film star, I think, at that time. And there he is in his home, and if I could see through the wall, I could probably see Maria having a cup of tea out the back there. But this is, again, the Labrador. I don't know what book he's reading. And there we are. Yes.
Okay, so, who do we have here?
Well, here we have Johnny Cash. And I embarrassed myself in front of Johnny rather badly. I wanted to get up high for a picture, so I stood on the hood of the rental car and unfortunately slipped and fell in what we don't really know. It was either horse dung, buffalo dung, but I later learned he didn't have any buffalo, but it was definitely that stuff. And he was very amused. He helped me up, and he went next to, oh, all right, he had a car. I don't think I've got much more really to say about it. We all know he was born, I think, in, is it Casita? No, where, what was that?
I think he grew up he lived in Ventura County in Ojai, I believe.
No, Casita Springs. Yeah. And, yes.
Did he say you were full of shit?
He was singing it at that time. He put it to music, and he used those words. I'm trying not to say those words, but there we are. He was good. He was fine. And
next, please, John.
Yes. Now, this is I have been photographing the same, for 50 years, and Ivor's been writing for, I don't know, 90.
Don't exaggerate, 79.
Many of the people we have photographed and interviewed have died. And I have 5,500 pictures with Getty Images, and they license my pictures for me. And these days, the only time my pictures actually sell are when somebody passes away. So this was Val Kilmer, and I'd been to Las Vegas with, let me think now, who was my assistant on that? It was a person called Gideon Davis. Yes, some of the stories, I mean, it's not nepotism, is it? But never mind about that. Sent to Las Vegas, Ivor's doing the story, Gideon's helping me as a photo assistant. He did a brilliant job, truly brilliant. And he married Joanna Wally, who was an English actress, and she was on the film, and Gideon and I got everything ready for the 11 o'clock shoot. 11 o'clock came, 12 o'clock came, 1 o'clock came, and eventually he and Joanne got out of the caravan they were in, or whatever it was, and made an appearance. And they seemed to be cross at us for some reason, but anyway, they posed, and is there another picture? I don't think so. No, there we are. So it's 1990. Might have been 1991. And I read in the Los Angeles Times about this astonishing girl who was beginning to win tennis tournaments throughout California, and she was Venus Williams. And that's her on the left when she was 11 years old. And I thought this was going to be a great story because she was going to all these quite fancy tennis clubs, and Richard was managing to get her in to play the game, and she beat everybody. People who were 16, 17, 18, she beat them all when she was 11 years old. So I thought this was a great job and a great story. So I suggested it to a writer friend who suggested it to an English newspaper, and we got an assignment. And I contacted Richard, and he said, come and meet us in Compton, and went to Compton and photographed them. He let me hit balls with Serena. He didn't let me hit with Venus, because he said to me, if you could possibly do something for me in that, yes, you can give these pictures to the paper you told me this was for, but I'd be grateful if you wouldn't ever release the pictures to anyone else until Venus turns pro, because we want to, I want to protect her from the media. It seemed odd him saying that, having invited me to do it and I was with the media, but he said, if you do that, when she turns pro, contact me and I'll give you an astonishing opportunity with Venus. So I did. I stayed there. I never sold them. This is Richard. When they made the film, the filmmakers actually bought this picture from Getty. It's in the title of the film at the end. Anyway, she turned pro. I contacted Richard. He was in Florida at the time at the Hoffman tennis camp, and reminded him of what he'd promised, and he said to me, you must be the most stupid person I've ever dealt with, and hung up the phone. And that was the end of that. But he'd actually done me a favor, because the pictures were never seen for like 4 or 5 years, and they've now been probably the most important pictures I've ever taken. And they were, well, he was good, and they were both great as well. And what they've achieved, I think, is astonishing.
It is, absolutely. So I think, moving on to the next.
Yes.
Local boy. I think he's a Ventura County high school guy.
Used to have that restaurant on the corner of one of the streets down there, whatever it was.
Tell us about Kevin.
I haven't got much to say about Kevin, really. I photographed him twice. Once right after Bull Durham, where it was in a hotel in Beverly Hills, and he came in. He said, where do you want me to stand? And I told him over there, and I clicked the shutter, and he said goodbye. So that was the end of... And then a second time, this was a BBC television interview in like 2002. Yeah, that was the first picture. So the second time we went to his house, he lived in the Hollywood Hills, had 2 Labradors, and was very obliging. But I had to shoot with a camera crew who were doing a television show on him, so I had to stand back and be cautious. But he was polite, he did everything, he was fine, yes.
Thank you.
Kirk Douglas.
Tell us about Kirk.
Well, I mean, I probably photographed Kirk 4 or 5 times. He always lived in the same house in Beverly Hills. I think he might have had, well, he always had a Labrador. And we photographed him in the garden. He also had some foundation where he was making children's playgrounds. He wrote a book called Dance with the Devil, and it's ironic that Mr. Davis has written a book about my friend the devil or something. What was the title of your book?
I can't actually remember, but you tell me about, carry on with Kirk.
Kirk, so, yes, well, that was that. He again, always did everything I asked, was amazingly polite, would sit down, please sit here by the fountain, please sit here by the pool. Why don't we go out in the back alley and throw balls for the dogs? And so we went out in the back alley of the house, and he threw the balls. And dog's obviously a bit greedy because it's already got one ball in its mouth.
And did you find, obviously you found Kirk to work with terrific, really, because he did a lot of stuff for you.
Yeah.
Before we carry on to the next picture, I wondered if you could give us the recipe for why you've been able to make these celebrities so comfortable with you. What is there a secret ingredient that Paul Harris has?
Well, this was all before Google and things like that, but if I got an assignment for a person, I would do some research, find out their lives, what they've done. If I knew where they were living and where I was going to do the shoot, I'd drive to the house a day or so before the shoot, have a look around, see if there's anything interesting nearby that I might persuade him to go to. When I arrive, I would be polite, and they would usually talk and start the conversation, but I would try always not to be controversial, or I wouldn't crack many of my jokes, because you never know who appreciates a joke. But it's that, because many people, many of these celebrities, when they had agreed to shoot for different magazines, the celebrity would often ask me to do the pictures. With Ivor, it happened with Jackie Collins, and photographed her probably 4 or 5 times, and she just liked working with you and liked working with me.
Yeah, we got some great pictures of Jackie.
Yes.
And those she was the sister of Joan Collins, if you don't know, and she was not as famous as Joan, although she was famous in America because she wrote all these racy inside Hollywood books that some of you may read, but she also was a absolute brilliant PR lady, and that's why we had such access to her house.
Yes.
And whatever we wanted, whatever Paul asked her to do, she did. Almost.
Yes. No, she built an amazing 2- or 3-story house in the middle of Beverly Hills, and she had a sort of stuffed cheetah by the swimming pool, and lots of things, and a Buddhist monk that was probably the size of an elephant, and yes, right.
Yeah, I've forgotten that, but you're right. Good.
And I traveled with his son, not Michael Douglas,
Michael.
but the other son, the one who died.
Was it Peter?
Bit of a crazy man.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay.
Right.
Tell us who that is, Paul. No, please keep your applause down. Please keep your applause down.
Well, this was 2004, and he just started SpaceX, and he had sold PayPal, and his wealth at this time was about $175 million, and he started SpaceX. The funny thing, well, slightly, I mean, I remember having a chat with him. We could go a bit further, and
Can you give us another picture,
there we
John?
are. We've got it. Yes, we've got it. And then I said to him, you know, Elon, these rockets, they're really interesting, good. I'm sure SpaceX is going well, but you really ought to think of electric cars. And
Did he go along with your suggestion?
1 year later, he bought a solid part of Tesla and built that company. And if anyone's ever read his autobiography or written by somebody, and I checked it out today on a bit more research, and it's true. Tesla was about to go bust in about 2008, and he had a massive contract and money coming from NASA for his SpaceX, and it was in the billions. And he used half that money to save Tesla, and both are what they are today. But at that time, he was, I think, 38.
Did you find him charming, funny?
Again, he did. I was doing that for a German magazine. It was some German writer who was here, and we went and did 5 different space companies who had different projects, and this was just one of them. And he was the factory was in Hawthorne near LAX. And again, no, he was nice, smiled, and did what would you mind standing in front of the rocket? How about leaning against the rocket? And that was that. It was good.
Is it hard to imagine that he's doing what he is today?
It's just beyond belief, but there you are, yes. I mean, the richest, I'm not sure how long he's going to stay the richest person in the world, but well, quite frankly, I don't understand how he runs all these companies and does all this stuff, what he's supposed to be doing for Doge or whatever it's called. Yeah, I mean, I've owned 2 companies, 3, and it takes all your time and all my wife's time doing the accounts. Now, how on earth you can cover so many subjects and matters, whether he thinks AI is going to be the secret, which is brilliant AI, but when it comes to dealing with human beings' lives and social security and all stuff like that, I don't like the idea of it all being dealt with by an algorithm. But there we are.
Okay. Tell us.
And of course,
is that your picture?
Well, I'd like to say it was my picture, but I took a few pictures from the roof of our house of the SpaceX going up. But I have a son called Maxwell who's sitting right there, and he was just walking with his iPhone through Santa Monica. Elon had launched a Falcon 9, and Max saw, oh, this looks like a good snap. Got out the iPhone and took the picture. And it's probably the best picture I've ever seen of anything.
Well, I'm going to interrupt and say, did you ever think that he might make a good photographer, Max, your son?
Yeah, he did, but he went the other way, you see. There was some photography, there was something called, was it Lomo? Lomo. There was Lomo. Lomo made cameras that did everything wrong with photography. They deliberately let light in the back of the camera with the film that would spoil the pictures a bit. They'd have a funny, fuzzy lens. It was photography that was completely against everything I wanted photography to be. But then that was what Max was like then.
John, I don't know how we're doing on time. We have before the Q&A about 10, 8, 9. Okay, thereabouts. Thank you. 15. Okay, good. So I think, John, we may have a few extra bonus celebrity pictures with Paul's remarkable stories. So can you...
Now, this man had a Ferrari. I heard he used to play football, and his wife had an accident. But this was when he was about to do an advertising campaign for Hertz, and this is outside the offices of Hertz in somewhere. We could go to the next one. And I'm surprised Ivor wasn't with me on this, but this is a press conference when they were opening a sports shop or somewhere and selling his clothes or whatever, and obviously that's Nicole, his wife. And he was also a charismatic, nice man. Yes. Well, this is Harrison Ford when he was married to his first wife, and that isn't her behind him. That's a it's a work of art. Harrison Ford, again, this was at the start of his career, and he was obsessed with woodwork. And in his garage, he had a lathe, and he used to make a lot of his furniture. And I could imagine the next picture is probably him at the lathe. No.
No, okay.
So,
No, before,
yes, Don.
no, before you leave Harrison, I think you and I have discussed this. Because he was such a great carpenter, he was able to do the carpentry work for Francis Ford Coppola, who liked him and put him in a few movies. And that's how his career started. Okay, let's move on to who's next.
Well, if anyone was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast recently, where he had Bill Murray as the guest, Bill Murray came on and said to Joe, I've never met you, and I didn't know what you were like. I had my doubts, but I've just been walking down the hallway, and I see that picture, and I know you're a great man. If you like Hunter S. Thompson, do you realize on that picture he's wearing a hat made of dog hair? And I got that hat made for him and gave him the hat. And if you remember, Bill Murray also played Hunter S. Thompson in Where the Buffalo Roam. And the podcast went on because Joe Rogan bought that picture from me, two of them, one for his New York office, one for his Los Angeles office. The only problem was when he bought the pictures from me, I'd never heard of Joe Rogan in my life or who he was. And I sold them to him at a ridiculous price. Later, about 2 years later, I learned he got that contract from, wasn't Spotify, who was it? It was somebody. Millions and millions of dollars. And he was already rich when I gave him these, not gave him, I sold them, I made a profit, but I could have made millions.
Yeah.
Right.
Why was...
Well, here's, I don't know if we got another picture of Hunter Thompson, but no. So go back to Hunter.
So go back to Hunter, because Hunter, I mean, many people in the room may say, I remember Hunter, but I can't remember why. Can you tell us how Hunter became so famous?
Yeah, well, he was a journalist. He worked for Sports Illustrated. He worked for Rolling Stone, and he also wrote a book called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which involved a mythical character called the Gonzo Journalist. It was really him, and it was like a Bible for all journalists because he went through it on how through the expenses from the magazines and newspapers you work for, you stay in the finest hotels, you drive the greatest cars, you buy alcohol, you do everything, and he did it to the very extreme. He's also famous for saying, I cannot condone sex, violence, alcohol, and drugs, but they've always worked for me. And this, he had a shotgun and he had a BMW. He shot bullets into the BMW. He had that pistol that had bullets in it, and I saw him take the bullets out of the back of the pistol and put them in his pocket, and then he jumped in this, which is what's called a link trainer. It's what in the late 1940s and early 50s pilots used to learn to fly in. They didn't fly, they were bolted to the ground, but they used to shake when you pretended to fly and all the instruments show the right numbers. Anyway, he jumped in his Link trainer and he pointed that gun at me, he pulled the trigger and screamed. And that was that. But I knew he'd taken the bullets out, so I was
mean,
right.
was Hunter a crazy man?
Yes.
Tell us, besides pointing a gun at you, what else?
All right. I was told I was going to photograph Hunter S. Thompson, but he had to light me first. And I was going to meet him at the Woody Creek Tavern at 11 o'clock at night, and I was to take a bottle of Chivas Regal with me. So I got a bottle of Chivas Regal, I arrived, and there should have been a few more pictures here of him sitting in the corner with a buffalo's head behind him and smoke. He was smoking, and I gave him the Chivas Regal, sat down, chatted, and he said, come back to the ranch with me. So went back to Owl Creek Ranch, where he started to do drugs and things and drink the Chivas Regal, and he said to me, join in if you want to, and I said no, because as a photographer, maybe as a writer, you can get drunk and just
all the time.
Imagine the words you've got to write afterwards, but as a photographer, you've got to use this equipment, and you can't really do it if you're off your head. So for the next 12 hours, he typed his stories, spoke to a girlfriend who was with him at the time, threw gasoline on a fire, went outside where there was a peacock and a gun. He didn't do anything to the peacock. And apparently the whole reason here was he had a dental appointment at 10 o'clock the next morning. And this was the second time, because the first appointment was cancelled, because he tries to make it that he arrives at the dental office almost unconscious, so that all they've got to do is do the final bit and do whatever he needs to do to his teeth. But both times he arrived at the dental office unconscious. So I don't know if he ever got his teeth fixed, but that was about that.
Yeah. So the moral of that story is, don't get drunk when you go to see the dentist, or get drunk, either way, right?
Well, you've got to control drinking, which is normal all the time, and anything else you do.
What
yes.
a character, what a character there.
No, he was amazing.
Now, he was a character, wasn't he, Paul?
Kenny Rogers,
Yeah.
he was good. Photographed him at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And do we have any more pictures of Kenny? No. Okay.
That's not Kenny Rogers' wife, is it?
That's not Kenny Rogers, no, he's not
That's
needed.
his wife, isn't it his wife? No.
No, that's a person called Zaza Gabor.
Zsa Zsa Gabor. Oh,
Zaza
yes,
Gabor.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So tell us about Zsa Zsa.
Zaza, well, she had 3 dogs. And I arrived at her Bel Air mansion and was let in for the assignment, and she wasn't dressed like that yet. She just came out to me and said, we've got a bit of a problem. Our housekeeper hasn't been here for 5 days. And so all the dog poop, the dogs had pooped all the way around the pool and on the carpet. You can see the yellow stains there. And she asked me if I'd be kind enough to pick it all up. So she went off to a room at the back with her darling husband, Prince Anwalt, and they dressed up in that normal stuff, which was a bit of a surprise to me when they came out like that. In the meantime, I had scrubbed the carpet, picked up all the turds, and put them in the dustbin. She didn't say thank you, she didn't say anything, and that was that, really. So there. And there should also be more pictures of her, but there isn't. So now we got Sylvester.
Yeah, before you talk about Sylvester, does that mean if anybody has poop in their carpet, you should give them the card, and they can you'll visit them. You know how to do it.
Yeah.
You're very good. Sorry, I don't. I mean, these
No,
little things.
and I'll take their portrait.
Oh,
as well.
good.
Yes, sorry.
Then that's a bonus.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about this guy.
Sylvester, another person who somehow invited me to the Santa Barbara Polo Club about 2 years before this photo shoot, and whoever owned the polo club had invited him, and he turned up with Jennifer Flavin, and I was like the best friend of everybody there. Later, when he went into business with two other people under Planet Hollywood, I did a story with him in this house in Bel Air, and I can remember when I arrived, all his lawyers were there and everything, and I told him what I thought we'd do. We'd go to the kitchen, we'd do this, we'd go out by the pool, and he looked at his lawyers and just said, hey, all just go away, this man's okay. And that's an example of what you were saying earlier. If you communicate with these people normally, they're kind of normal people. They know this is work, because publicity is how they exist and make money. But he, as you can see, there's a few pictures missing here where he actually looks like he's going to stab himself. But there, would you put the tomato on the end of the knife, and that was that.
Yeah.
Are we getting to the end now? I've not got much to say about Mr. Hasselhoff. He was fine. Hugh Hefner. I probably went to the Playboy Club 3 or 4 times, to the Grotto, and didn't really get anything outrageous. He was also fine. I had no idea he behaved how he did when you read the history of Mr. Hefner now. But it was a fine house with peacocks in the back garden, swimming pools, and girls. Scantily clad.
Oh, there he is.
Oh!
There is the young, ever effervescent Paul
Yes.
Harris. And Paul, this is a perfect place. I've been told to stop and say something. Go ahead.
Oh, it's only to say that this was back in the day when if you shot black and white and color, you had to have 2 cameras for each. And these days with digital, you just need 1 camera and you can do everything. But back in the day, you carried that sort of stuff, which is probably why I had a bad back.
Okay. Well, now I think I've been told that we're ready for the questions. I'm sure there are questions. And let's see, ladies. Come on.
You had mentioned you had provided some advice to Elon Musk. Were any of the celebrities you dealt with offer you advice, or did you give anybody else some advice?
I did actually, but I'm trying to remember. Yes, Mr. Reagan, I remember now. The 40th President of the United States, and he was just about to go to the White House, and there I was alone with him at in a couple of rooms at the ranch, and I said to him, when you meet the Russian president, you have to say, take that wall down. And thank you, Clark. Thank you, Clark. Yes, great question. Next question, please.
And did he take the wall down?
It took him 6 years or so, and it's finally said it to Gorbachev, and the wall came down.
Hello.
Hello.
So, having to pick up Zsa Zsa Gabor's dog poo, did you ever go for a photo shoot and decide not to take their picture?
No. There were a few where it didn't quite go as I'd hoped, but I was usually on assignment and getting paid to do the story. There was one person quite famous who did a concert, a singer, and I went to meet him in New York, and we went on his airplane to the concert, and during the airplane, the deal was normally I would go on assignment. Back in the day, you own all the copyright, no matter who paid for anything, you own the copyright, you own the picture. Once the assignment's over and the publications published it, you have the right to sell it anywhere in the world. So you could do financially quite well out of it. And this person on the airplane, his lawyer came up to me and said, you need to sign this contract which stops you selling these pictures to anyone and if you don't sign it, we will land the plane and you can get off. And that was that. And so I signed the contract, but I wasn't very happy. But I can't remember a situation where I did not do my best to get the pictures. There were times when I never got the pictures, but that happens. If a bee stung you, what would it be? A sting.
Thank you. I have a question. I really appreciate your photography, and I'm curious about your lighting. What you do on location for lighting?
Yes, well, California is fantastic, and but my main lighting was a softbox, because if you take too many lights and make the lighting complex, you only tend to end up with one picture. But if you're flexible and you can move around as you take the pictures, but you still need light. If I had the choice to tell someone when I was going to shoot them, it would either be within 3 hours of sunrise or 2 hours before sunset, because of the light that comes in. But in California, all the assignments, I mean, I was an international foreign correspondent. All the pictures I was doing were for foreign magazines who had seen Hollywood, Los Angeles, California through films. They'd seen palm trees, swimming pools, bikinis, everything. And that's what my editors expected to see in the pictures. And I found with the softbox, I had an 8-foot softbox, which, when it was a windy day, was a little difficult. It did drop on one actor's head once, but with that softbox, you could, with an assistant holding it, and a blue sky and palm trees and a pool and even a sunset, front light them with the softbox, and everyone looked amazing. And that's the great thing with California. And if you remember about the film industry, it's why the film industry moved from New York in the 1900s to Los Angeles, because here there were deserts, mountains, and great light and good weather through most of the time. Whereas in New York, like England, you might decide to do a shoot on next Thursday and it rains, or it's cloudy, or it's terrible. Whereas California, so most of the shoots, most of the assignments I got here, they were just in fantastic weather, but you did need lighting to make it better.
Thanks. I am curious what your tools of choice are. What is your favorite camera and lens setup?
Yeah, well, I ended up using Nikon. When I first came here, Terry Fincher, who I mentioned, the Vietnam photographer, was also sponsored by Olympus, and they gave me a full kit of Olympus to come here. But whenever there was an important picture to take, the Olympus would jam, and I'd miss the picture. So in the end, I abandoned Olympus and went for Nikon. Now, I liked Nikon, so typically, as you saw back in the day, you'd need 4 cameras. Digital only started for me in 2000, 2001, and I did buy a Fuji digital camera. But I shot film for quite a long time, and so back in the day, you'd have fixed lenses, so you'd go with a 28, a 50, 135, and however long you could afford, a 300 millimeter. Gradually, as cameras developed, the zoom lenses came along, the quality improved. Back in the day, you always had to be careful what film you used, whether it was black and white or color, and the speed of the film, because there were crystals on the front of the film to capture the light. And in darkness, you needed more sensitivity in the film, and it would show. But these days with digital, it's simply amazing that the shutter speeds you can use, the ASA speeds you can use, zoom lenses you can use. I know there's a very experienced photographer amongst us, Stuart Cook somewhere, who deals with this stuff. There he is, he's hiding over there. So in my day, it was a softbox, usually 2 Nikons, and the last camera I bought was a Nikon D750. Back in the day of war photography, you'd have a black Nikon, Nikon F, all black, so that the bad guys can't see you without reflections. And is that enough? Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure there's more than one answer to this. However, is there that one photograph that you took, that you know you took, but somehow lost it, whether the picture got damaged during processing, or is there one in your memory that burned into your brain and you always think about that one?
Well, I didn't lose them. The 2 best ones I think I've taken is the jumping sheep and the picture in Rhodesia, One Man, One Vote. They seemed quite meaningful to me. But some pictures that I've lost the negatives of, because being here, often you had to ship the raw film to England, and those were the days when I could walk through security, straight to the gate where they were boarding the flight, offer somebody £10, give him a packet that was sealed, and he'd jump on the airplane, or she would, and take it. I didn't always get all the pictures back. The picture shoot I had the most was with Sam Walton, who is Walton, Walmart, and all those companies. And for the London Daily Mail and a reporter, Peter Mackay, we went to interview Sam Walton in Benton, Arkansas. And no appointment, no nothing. Walked up and went to the front office, told them what we were there for, and they said, you must be joking. If you think Sam Walton's coming out to talk to you, just go away. So we went away. But we found out where Sam Walton lived. And this was probably 1982 or 84 or something. And I went out to Sam Walton's house at 6 in the morning, and sure enough, he came out in his pickup with a dog in the back and drove towards the factory, but he turned off and went into a town and stopped outside a door, and I thought, oh no, what's he going to do here? And then the lights came on, and there he was, sitting in a barber's chair, having his hair cut, and I was on the other side of the road and shot through the window, and he's reading the newspaper, and he's having his hair cut. When he comes out, I go up to him and say, hello, Mr. Walton, and he looked at me and he said, whoa, you're persistent, aren't you? And I said, yes, I got some great pictures of you. Can I take one of you and the dog? And yeah, sure. So the dog was still in the back of the pickup. He stood behind the dog and got some great pictures. He said goodbye. He was wonderful. I lost all the pictures. It was a double-page spread in Life magazine, and I actually copied the picture out of Life magazine, and it's the only picture I've got of that set. That is the most important set I've ever lost.
Can you tell us, Paul, some of us, the name Sam Walton may not ring a bell. Can you tell us who he was?
Well, he was the founder of Walmart. He was one of the richest. Well, he didn't. Yes, the Walton family now have something like $487 billion. They are one of the richest families in America. And at the time, the other thing I learned, which was quite interesting, why they were based in Arkansas. Arkansas has more states around it than many other states in America. So at that time, delivering stuff by trucks and things, it was a great central place to deliver to all your shops and factories and whatever that was around you. So he was obviously a very clever. Only trouble with Benton, Arkansas is it's a dry state and you can't drink in it. Right, sorry. Clark wants it again.
I'm coming.
Did you have a favorite person that you wanted to photograph more? And the second question is, how often did you two work together?
We must have done 20 or 30 stories, if not more. Ivor? I think he's gone to sleep. All right.
You want me to tell you how many stories we went on? I would say you and I covered maybe 2,000 stories, which wasn't bad. I can't remember them all, but I remember the ones that you were there because you know, why you sort of bossed everybody around and you didn't give me time to interview the person. I'm doing that now.
And there you were laying in front of Muhammad, ruining my picture. But yes, and sometimes you would come up with strange stories, Ira. The genius sperm bank was one of the stranger stories. But,
And
This is an incredible story that Paul and I worked on. And so if you want to know anything about sperm, talk to Paul.
yes. He had a friend called Cappy Rothman, and had this brilliant idea that they could start a company that collects sperm from geniuses or people of high IQ and market it. And there was a female doctor called Dr. Afton Blake, and she decided to have have some sperm from a genius, and the genius son, Doran Blake, was born. Ivor started the story. This went on for like 3 or 4 years. We started the story, we did Cappy Rothman. I then went to San Diego to the place where the sperm was stored in freezing tanks. And then Dr. Afton Blake came along and she became pregnant. Then she gave birth. And about 3 years after that, we went to photograph Doran, who was an amazing child. And I photographed him with a computer. That was that story that went on for years. He never materialized into quite the genius he was supposed to. But I think probably cell phones came along or something and ruined his life.
I'm going to interject because this will fit in nicely with the genius concept. I don't know about the last pictures, though. But you've interviewed so many brilliant people, Bill and Melinda Gates. And Melinda just came out with her new book. Any photos, any tales to tell about the Gates?
Not really. I never did them together. I was employed by, not employed, but I would, 2 times a year, a technology magazine called Information Week would ask me to go to their fancy conferences where they charge like $3,000 per person to listen to the likes of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Michael Dell, Larry Ellison, and one of the speakers was Melinda Gates, so I photographed Melinda Gates, and I would get 10 or 15 minutes after they'd all done their talking, and there were MIT professors and people from Harvard, and this was at a very important time in my industry when analog film was changing to digital, and it was what they called packet technology. Now, normally, I left school at 15. I knew nothing about this stuff. Not that there was any of that stuff back then. But here I was for 2 or 3 years going to these conferences and getting, not only listening, but getting some time with the people who actually understood what they were doing, like Michael Dell, Jobs, and what have you, and photographing them. And from that, I formed a company in 1994 called Online USA, which Getty Images bought from me in 1999 as the cornerstone of their entertainment division of Getty Images, which is now the biggest photo agency in the entire world. And during the acquisition of my company, I met Mark Getty, and that was quite interesting. I've lost track from what the original question was. Bill Gates, I only photographed with some very tall baseball player. No, he was a basketball player. I can't remember his name. And I didn't really get very close to those people. Not those two. Wonderful answer. All right. Yes, Mr. Hubbard. Let me get. I got it, Paul. You got it? Yes. He asked the greatest questions.
I recognize that the two of you have been on several, numerous shoots and stories together, so I have a two-part question. Which story would you maybe think was the most meaningful that the two of you were on? And secondarily, what's the reason why Ivor thinks there's 2,000 and you think it's 20 or 30 occasions? Was alcohol involved?
I missed the second part. What made Ivor think?
Why is it that Ivor thinks you went on 2,000 adventures together and you think it was only 20 or 30, and was alcohol involved?
Yes. It's very tricky to know what Ivor actually did when he wasn't with me. But the greatest story I did with him or with anyone was Muhammad Ali. I cannot think of anything through. He just made that film, or within that film, called Freedom Road, and he asked me to watch it with him at the end of the day, and he was extraordinary. But as to Ivor, his behavior was astonishing. He is one of the most amazing photojournalists I've ever worked with in my life. And yes.
Well, thank you. You know, I think we should end on that note. I mean, we've covered the waterfront. We've covered. I made a few notes. We've covered sperm. We've covered
masturbation.
What?
Masturbation.
Masturbation.
Very
yeah.
good.
We covered. We had nothing to do with sperm and masturbation, but we've covered Elon Musk, who has 14 children.
Yes.
So tell me, and we've covered Hugh Hefner, who also has been active. Anyway, so I think we're almost winding up, and I don't know if Paul has anything further to say, but I just want to say that this has been a terrific conversation, and I want to do the little promotion. I want to thank Elena and her fantastic staff. I want to thank John back there pushing the buttons and doing all the things he does, and every member of the, you can add in a minute, once I get on a roll you can't stop me. And I want to tell you all out here and listening in, and I want you to support the museum because it deserves it. They're a terrific organization. They give us this venue, allowing us to talk all sorts of stuff, and support your museum, please. And with that, Paul would like to add something, right?
Well, only just thank everyone who's come, especially my friends, and someone's waving back there. Can you see the jumping sheep again? No.
Jumping sheep?
Unless John can get up the jumping sheep, but that was, my mother had died, and I went back for the funeral. In fact, Petronella's mother and my mother died like 4 weeks apart from each other, and After the funeral, I went for a walk across the field, and I had just an ordinary pocket camera with me, not an iPhone. And as I walked, it was a place called Abersham Cliffs, and as I walked across the field, oh, there's Jane Mansfield, by the way. These are all the pictures of the picture will be in the Dirty Dozen. Sheep. Oh no, the picture is only on the video, the very last frame of the video. Anyway, I was walking across the field, Abersham Cliffs, and I saw these sheep all running around. And one or two of them were just jumping in the air. And I got the camera out and just clicked at the very moment that it Oh. There we are. Oh, he's done it. John. Amazing. Thank you very much. A brilliant act. Yes. Yeah. So all I can, it got published quite a lot because to get a picture like that is just,
Is it serendipity?
It is sheer luck. Because like iPhones, when you push the button to take the picture, it's a fraction of a second after the picture you wanted has happened. So a leaping sheep, normally he'd be lying on the ground by the time the picture's taken, but that one, his paws are perfect, his ears are lovely, and there we are. So,
Well, I want to say, Paul,
and coming from the West Country, we do love sheep. They're very nice, yes.
Okay, so we'll meet here in about a month, and we'll go through some other pictures. But I want to say to you all, thank you for coming. Thank you for the terrific museum staff. And thank you very much, Paul Harris, for sharing your life with us.
Yes. And thank you very much, my friends. I see lots of them around. And thank you. Mitch and Michelle, yes, very nice. Oh, thank you very much, Marty. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Okay, that was fun.
Right.